us at the C-SPAN networks, 400 North Capitol Street, Suite 650, Washington, D.C. Our zip code is 20001. Next on C-SPAN, we'll bring a 10-minute portion of this evening's 5 o'clock evening newscast from KSDK TV, NBC affiliate in St. Louis. That newscast focused on the flood now ravaging throughout Missouri and other parts of the Midwest. Here now is that program.
It was sunny today in St. Louis, but it poured in Davenport and beyond, and all that water is heading our way. Good evening. I'm Karen Foss.
And I'm Dan Gray. Our top story this evening, the worst is yet to come as the floodwaters inundate riverside communities.
News Channel 5's Rick Edlund is down at the St. Louis riverfront with the latest on the rising water. Rick?
Well, Karen and Dan, it is very hot and dry here along the arch grounds, and normally under these conditions that would be considered ideal and that would be considered very good news. But as you mentioned, there is rain to the north. There has been rain here as well the past couple of days. And so guess what? The Mississippi River continues to rise. It is now at 40 feet. It is expected to crest next Wednesday at 45 feet. And yes, that would be a new record. So what do area rivers look like from up above? News Channel 5 photographer Joe Young took a helicopter ride today, and here's what he saw.
On the Missouri River, the rushing water proved to be too powerful for a levee between New Haven and Hermon. It burst and water swallowed chunks of the levee, washing into farm fields, destroying wheat, corn, and soybean crops. In Washington, Missouri, sections of Highway 94 are washed out. Rushing water is ignoring a stop sign and plowing across an intersection. In St. Charles, Frontier Park is now underwater. Just yesterday, the water was more than 20 yards from the gazebo. Now it surrounds it. Water also surrounds a cornfield in St. Charles, where 3 deer are safe for now with plenty to eat. On the Mississippi River in Grafton, where the Mississippi meets the Illinois River, water is everywhere in a town usually known for its summer tourism. A levee burst along the Mississippi, sending water cascading over to what was once the dry side of the riverbanks. The river edge along downtown Alton, Illinois is overflowing. And here in St. Louis, of course, the Mississippi River is rising well above the Lenore K. Sullivan Boulevard, making its way to the arch grounds.
And looking down on the riverfront right now, as you can see, people are fascinated with this flooding and the view of the river. They have been here by the dozens, by the hundreds all day long. Last week, of course, they were here for the VP Fair. Now they want to watch the river. They stand there like they're transfixed, looking at the water, looking at how high it is. Well, further upstream, the fight against the river moves to Alton, Illinois overnight. That old river town is where our News Channel 5's Mike Owens joins us now live. Mike, what have you got?
Rick, behind me is the big ConAgra grain elevator, used to be called the PV elevator, and the big muddy Mississippi River on the city's main drag on Broadway. And the black line you see at the foot of that elevator is the 1973 flood mark. That's the benchmark here in Alton. Everything is measured by this line. Crews are building one of the more sophisticated temporary levees that I've seen in my last 5 or 6 days of covering this flood. Highway retainers on a bed of sand wrapped with plastic and topped with sandbags. The idea, seal the water out. But there's already flooding. Pumps running 24 hours a day to keep basements dry from nearby businesses. Here's proof the pumps cannot keep up with the water. A restaurant basement flooded with about 18 inches of water. Mitch Doerr is the owner of the restaurant and the new underground lake.
We're going to wait it out. We've got sandbags and a levee built behind the building, and we've gotten everything out of the basement. It should not get to the first floor. If it does, we'll be in trouble. The utilities are pretty much all up high. I think we'll be all right. We're just taking a wait-and-see attitude.
Rick, while Alton is fighting this flood, these are pictures of proof that West Alton has lost its battle against the river. About 3 to 4 feet of water in the town, with more of that water on the way. At 6 o'clock, I'll have more photographs that Dan Eyrich and I were in town and saw what was going on in West Alton. Of course, Rick will have more of that coming up at 6 o'clock. I can't hear too well over the sound of the heavy equipment as the folks here in Alton continue to build their temporary levee. Rick?
All right, Mike, thank you very much. It already looks like the situation in West Alton is rapidly approaching, if not worse, than the Great Flood of 1973. Well, the Mississippi is causing the River des Peres to back up, and that, of course, is causing problems in Limay. A massive sandbagging effort there continues nonstop. But as News Channel 5 Sharon Stevens reports, evacuation is now more of a possibility.
Missouri Congressman Richard Gephardt and St. Louis County Executive Buzz Westphal got a first-hand look at the sandbagging effort in Limay. Gephardt promised federal aid would be forthcoming soon.
We're going to do it as fast as we possibly can. They could not act till they got the request from the state. They're going to get that tonight. We will shepherd it through the White House procedure and get the designation as quickly as possible.
Volunteers and St. Louis County workers are anxious for the federal help. They are building a wall of sandbags. It's supposed to be 5 feet tall. They hope the sandbags will help hold off the rising floodwaters for as long as possible. Emergency services officials say there's a definite possibility that Limay residents will be evacuated.
The crest seems to be holding for Tuesday, the 13th. At least the last 2 days, that's the way it's been. So I think it'll hold into next week. We should be able to give the residents a couple of days' notice to get out.
Meanwhile, some here say they're not waiting for a possible evacuation order. They're leaving on their own.
My sister lives over on Kirshner. I'm going to stay with her for a while, and then I might get a place of my own, because we'll probably be out a couple, 3 months once we get out, you know.
Chris Germain and his grandparents are also getting a head start. They are disappointed, though, because the rising waters have drastically changed their future plans.
Our house was up for sale. We were 3 weeks away from selling it, so now we're not.
You think it's made a difference because of this?
Oh, yeah, a whole bunch of difference, because nobody wants to move into a big flood zone like this.
And officials say any evacuation for Limay probably won't come before the weekend. Sharon Stevens, News Channel 5.
Okay, Sharon, thank you very much. You know, this is a nice, safe place to stand and look at the rising river. It's also a nice place to judge its impact. Now, back in 1973, the water came up almost up a couple of steps of the second bridge here of the grand staircase leading to the arch grounds, so it has a little ways to go. Back in 1973, park officials were worried that the water might actually reach the terminal railway tunnel. Now, next week, as I mentioned, the Mississippi is still supposed to crest at 45 feet. It right now is at 50 feet. It came across the parking lot, the Lenora K. Sullivan Boulevard right there, and then almost first flight of steps. If it goes another 5 feet, as experts are predicting now by next Wednesday, it should probably be up to the middle of the second row of stairs. And again, that would be a new record, a dubious record for this area, far eclipsing the flood of 1973. Of course, if we do get more rain up north, as supposedly has already fallen today, all of these estimates could go by the board and the water might even rise higher. That's it from the Mississippi River right now. Let's go back to you in the studio, Karen and Dan.
All right, Rick.
Thanks, Rick.
Thank you.
Looking at weeks more of misery.
That's right. And the news apparently is just as bad for people who live along the Missouri River.
Even in places you might not think would be affected, there's a river running through today. Hermann, Missouri, famous for its winery, sits on a bluff about 80 miles west of St. Louis. News Channel 5's Lisa Zigman has just returned from Hermann. Lisa?
Karen and Dan, we took Chopper 5 to survey all the damage west along the Missouri, and when we got to Hermann, we saw the quaint town drenched in stagnant floodwater.
The view from above shows you the extent of flooding, even to Hermann, which sits on a bluff. Randy Steers and his friends took us along to survey the damage from the overflowing Frenny Creek. We started on the town's soccer field, now 10 feet underwater. Neil Scheidegger owns the local gas station right in the heart of town.
Pumps are probably about, 2.5 foot under right now. Back in '86, we had 2 foot of water inside here, so.
So it's not as bad as '86 yet?
Not yet, but they're supposed to be getting that way, the way that we understood, but you don't know until it gets here.
Danny Baumstark opened his front doors to Hermann Lumber to give us a glimpse inside his business.
We've got 12 inches on the floor right now, and virtually it stopped everything. We have no business right now except for maybe plastic and a few odds and ends people might need for emergencies.
How are people holding up in Hermann?
Oh, I think spirits are pretty good. You know, nothing you can really do about it.
Despite all the flooding and the river going right through the center of town, the people of Hermann, for the most part, remain pretty laid back. It's about as laid back as those wineries many of you have visited so many times before.
The local Ford dealership saved all of its new cars, but lost a few used ones. And Hermann Country Custard shipped in 15 tons of sand and remains open for business. Roy Steinwell remembers the last flood in '86 very well.
This is worse. This is worse.
In fact, the crest in Herman, there may be some good news. It's supposed to be today at 34.5 feet. That is 13.5 feet over flood stage. But keep in mind, as Rick mentioned, as we'll mention throughout the newscast, that will change if we get any more rain. Karen and Dan?
Lisa, we saw a lot of the businesses there in Herman, but what about the famous wineries? How are they doing?
Well, Karen, the wineries are high enough up. They're fine, but the town is basically cut off. There is one road that's open, that's not covered by water, and people in Herman and others along the Missouri just hoping and praying for some dry weather.
And with those roads covered, tourism will be affected.
So that's for
All
sure.
right.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thanks. Well, President Clinton is promising to ask Congress for more help for Midwest flood victims now, making the pledge in a radio address from Tokyo today. The president says he wants flood victims treated with compassion and effectiveness. The president says work has already started on a flood relief bill to help pay for crop losses, damage to homes, business, and public property. Now, the president is appealing for teamwork between government agencies and volunteer groups in the flood relief effort.
And you, too, can help the people trying to hold back the rising water. Our Volunteer 5 hotline has turned into a flood relief hotline. More than 1,200 people have already called, but new requests for help are coming in by the hour. Call 969-VOL5, and the volunteer operators will let you know where your help is needed, and telephone volunteers will be standing by until 7 o'clock tonight. Well, if you can't volunteer time, but you still would like to help the flood victims, you can donate money to Flood Relief 5. The Red Cross and News Channel 5 will be accepting flood donations this weekend at 6 locations: South County Center, West County Center, St. Clair Square, Northwest Plaza, Mid-Rivers Mall, and the St. Louis Galleria. Checks and cash will be collected at these locations between 10 and 6 on both Saturday and Sunday.
KSDK TV is the NBC affiliate in St. Louis, Missouri. We have this programming note tomorrow here on C-SPAN at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, 7 a.m. Pacific. We'll go live to bring you a 2-hour special on the flood in the Mississippi River region. We'll talk to several federal, state, and local officials about the flood and efforts to clean up the region. That's tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, 7 o'clock on the West Coast.